Greetings, hi, hello. I also hope that the lighting is not going to be affected too much. I'm doing this at night, which I normally don't do, so getting the lighting right, it's a challenging journey. Anyways, hi, hello, I'm Fire Lotus the Witch, and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube page. Hi. So on this video, I'm going to go over a couple of questions specifically revolving around altars. Um, Left out offerings and the whole how long do I leave it? Is it accepted or not? And unfortunately, none of that's going to be very easy to decipher, as in me explaining it to you. So, for one, do you have to have an altar? A altar? No, you do not. Anything can be an altar, and I literally do mean anything. From a shoebox, I've had a shoebox, I've had a dresser drawer, as in just one single drawer was the altar. I've had a jewelry box as an altar. I've had a compact notebook as an altar where I would either A, print pictures off, or B, try to sketch it out. And I would basically just kind of set it up like this against the wall, and voila. And when I was in a couple of situations where I could not actually burn candles after a certain amount of time, I went out and bought some LED candles. And voila, magic. Yes, I know there's a lot of debates and questions around LED candles and if you can actually do spell work with them. Let me know if you want me to do a video on that. I think that would be interesting. Anyways, so anything can be an altar and it can look like anything. Now, I will state a lot of the newer trends and just in general, because I used to hate on it, but I do understand to a degree the aesthetic of witchcraft because it does put you into a mood. And what is spellcasting? What is artwork? What is rituals? Crafting spells and things like that. Witchcraft in general and spellcasting and rituals, it is a type of art and it is a type of craft. How do you hone in on that? Making sure you're in the right mind state, making sure you're in the right mood, and just in general boosting your self-esteem with that witchy mood, whatever that witchy aesthetic is to you versus me and everything else in between. It does get you into that empowerment pose and that empowerment feeling, which is what you were supposed to have when you do witchcraft and or your specific craft. It is something sacred to you to where you are in control. Yes, there are moments where you can lose that control, but specifically you are in control. That is one thing that witchcraft always taught me in some way, shape, or form. It teaches you how to gain that confidence back of saying, this is my body, this is my life, this is my work, right? Anyways, so when it comes to leaving things on the altar or what the altar looks like, I was originally self-taught Wiccan. Uh, Originally, I'm not that now. So a lot of my altars, and I do have a lot of them, they do have certain things that would tie into Wiccan or witchcraft in general, like a specific chalice or altar, things like that. What I'm trying to say is I'm slowly branching out of that, and altars are going to look different. They can look witchy. They cannot look witchy at all. Like, for an example, a family member that I'm very close to in my family who does not practice in any way, shape, or form, they moved into a new place recently. So now they have like it's not really a coffee table, but it's like a coffee table, but it's longer. I don't know what it's called, like household wise, but it's a very lengthy table, and normally you put it somewhere in, like, say if you have this small little cubby when you walk in your door and you take your shoes off and shit, like right there is a display. It's one of those tables. Anyways, it has all of the past relatives that this family member has pictures of. They're all on that table, and there are certain other trinkets and little charms that they've also collected that those my ancestors liked that are now on the table. And I had to break it to them, and I'm like, you do realize that's an ancestor altar, right? And they're like, well, I don't want to go against, and I'm like, you're not going against anything, you're honoring them. That's key to this. Okay, when it comes to an ancestor altar, it does not have to look witchy. When it comes to your altar, it does not have to be witchy. It can be inside, it can be outside. Hold that thought. How did I know you're going to mess with it? Bastiette, when it comes to curtains, it's like, oh, it's a wall I can play with. Okay, stop. Go the other way. There we go. But yes, altars can look anywhere. Now, there is a couple of times I've learned on TikTok a way that I like, because normally, like with my altar, It is primarily just magical or enchanted things or things that are dear to me and or that remind me of a specific person. Hold that thought. I'm not even gonna lie, I have no idea where I was at in this video besides I know what topic I was talking on. Sorry, I had to move the cat, and then when I moved the cat, they yanked this and everything fell, and yeah, I'm also tired. Anyways, so when it comes to that's what I was talking about. So on TikTok, I learned that so say this specific area of the screen right now is your altar. Some people, because when it comes to deity work that you will see from other practitioners and then even yourself, it's your own personal journey. Okay, what I'm saying by that is, yes, you may have similar experiences, or you'll wind up finding, like for an example, Loki. They love cinnamon candy, cinnamon whiskey, candy in general. They're very random about it, but you'll understand that, and I'm going to explain that a little bit as well. But some people believe, and some people have had experiences where they accidentally set their cup on their altar and then a deity claims it. A way around that is to have a small little dish or a specific area on the altar to where you set your boundaries with your deities and spirits, saying, hey, if I sit it right here, nobody claim it. It's still mine. Okay. ADHD. Okay. I'll lay something down and forget about it for like 3 hours and then come back to it. Now, the reason this can get complex is due to the fact that, say, you work with an infernal, right? And then say you work with just a normal, regular day deity, right? One of them may like something to rot or mold, while the other one, that would be a bad sign, okay? And you're probably like, well, can you really get bad signs that, they just rejected it? Yes, they can. That's part of the journey of being able to figure out what they want. In my ancestry work, a lot of my ancestors, either A, they were dead and gone before I even knew them, or B, I don't really have the resources financially, and or even I'm not really, depending on the side of the family we're talking about, they either don't know enough or I'm not close enough to randomly hit them up and be like, yo, what's up, Ann? I haven't spoken to in like fucking 10 years, 15 years. How you doing? I wanted to know about so-and-so. So through that, I learned this when I first started working with my ancestors specifically, because for like an entire year, unless I was doing spell work or I had some type of other thing that was already set up before this, I specifically worked with my ancestors during this specific year. Now, primarily ancestors, but also certain deities or infernals, or other beings. But through that and through the process that I learned and self-taught myself, I already have a video on that, but let me know if you want a refresher of that. But in the process of that, I allowed them to show me what they liked. And a small example of what that's like, me and my partner were in Dollar General, and I was like, oh, fuck, I got to get bread. ADHD, so I can make a list, but I'm still remembering everything we need to get. And I walked down the bread aisle, and our Dollar General, the bread aisle is connected to the candy aisle. So I was like, all right, I'll be back. I'm going to get bread. Next thing I know, literally, I turned away from my partner and I was like, I'm going to get bread. Walked in the vicinal area, and I ended up on the bread aisle, but instead of looking at bread, I was staring at the different types of candies. And then my partner walked up right in that moment, and he's like, what are you doing? I thought you were getting bread. And all I muttered was Loki. He wanted a specific type of candy. I've done that with my grandmother too. The other time though, when I actually first realized Loki was coming through, we had stopped at this liquor store that we were cashing our checks at that point in time. Don't look at me funny. It's Florida. Okay. I would say small town, but where I'm talking about, it's not, it's a city. Anyways, I wasn't cashing my check at that point, and my partner had walked in, and as he got out of the car, I was like, yo, I need 2 small bottles of Fireball whiskey. And he looked at me and he goes, what, why? For one, this is the reason I love this man. I told him, and he goes, oh, okay, just say so. And I was like, I just did. In that moment though, word vomit, as in I was not sitting there thinking, hey, I need to get fired. Loki. That was one of the first times Loki really came forward and was like, yo. So yeah, it's like that. On TikTok, you'll see other creators. Some creators nail it perfectly. Other creators fluff it up or exaggerate it more. Um, and the reason I pointed that part out is because there are some people that have come to me and they're like, well, I'm not getting the responses that I'm seeing in these videos. And I'm like, it's slightly exaggerated. Um, and everybody's going to be different with how you interpret, though, like if a deity comes forward. But when it comes to the offerings, normally, and I know this is going to sound like a cop out, normally you will know if it's accepted or if it's not accepted. And if it's not accepted, don't get down and shit. Okay, this it's a thing. It happens to everybody, no matter how long you've been practicing, no matter what you've been doing. It's just normal. All right. Um, but also examine it. And this is what I mean by the mundane thing. So I live here in Florida. If I lay out wine or water in the middle of fucking the summer, we live in an old school house, so everything's not like tight fit like a new house, right? So there's leaks and shit. But with our AC on in the room where my altar's at, that's gonna blow shit in the air. So eventually that water will go from a normal state to it gets a little funky on top. But I've also had the exact same experience, except for the exact opposite, to where the water, like I had poured it and it had already been like 3 weeks down the road. That's also normally with my ancestor cup. I have 2 cups, an ancestor cup, and then I have another cup that I fill every now and then for a specific deity. I'll name that deity or just in general. But in my personal practice, there are also some days where if there's still coffee in the coffee pot, after I finish or my partner's finished, instead of wasting that extra, which there are hundreds of different things that you can use that for around your property, I'll pour it in my coffee cup, or I have 3 different cups for my ancestors, depending on what I'm giving them, and I'll pour it in there. Make sure it's warm, pour it in there, add sugar and cream, and then I'll place it on my altar for like maybe 12 hours, if that, maybe 5 hours. And then I'll eventually take it off. But there are specific items, like right now I've got a couple of pieces of candy for my ancestors, and for Loki. And you just kind of monitor it. If it looks like it's getting a little funky, then take it off, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've rejected it. Again, we have to go into the mundane state. Now, true enough, they can affect it and alter it. There have been times where I've set out wine mundane wise, it was hot, it was humid, it probably evaporated, but instead of it just completely evaporating and molding or some weird shit like that, it actually like turned into like this concentrate of the wine. I've had a few moments, because I do have depression and I'm not going to hide that. It does affect my practice. In my head, when I go through my episodes with depression, I look at it as like that's my winter. Okay, that's my point in time where I pause and turn inward and kind of step away from certain things. And when I first started experiencing it on a normal day basis, I kind of had a lot of emotions with that because I felt like I was neglecting it. But I found ways around that. Um, and I also came to the conclusion that deities, divine beings, spirits, every other thing that goes bump in the night that we work with as witches, they realize that we're spiritual beings in a humanistic experience, and sometimes no matter how spiritual you are, no matter how positivity you are, that chemical imbalance comes and knocking. Okay. But there was a point in time where I had just got into making homemade biscuits from scratch. My father-in-law taught me, and I became hyper fixated on them. You know how people are on bread? I was with biscuits. We were having homemade biscuits every night, to the point where we had like an entire family size bowl of just leftover biscuits that I did start freezing. Anyways, I put 4 of them on my altar inside, and then I put 2 outside. I'm also going to go over that as well. And I had a bout of depression, really bad one, and I think I also had some other issue, like I got sick or something. So like fucking almost a month, if not like 2 months, had rolled by, and I'd completely forgotten about them. I walk in there, which I also discovered something else that was going on during that time. I've talked about it before, but when I went to remove them from the altar, one of them fell and it hit the plate that it was on, and it sounded like a rock had hit it. Instead of them molding, instead of them, getting all weird and shit, they like calcified. Like they turned into a fucking scone that turned into a stone. They were rock hard. It's literally like they were mummified. And I took that as, oh my God, they accepted it. I've laid out wine and juice before outside, and I walk back outside 30 minutes later, and there's all different types of bees and yellow jackets over it, getting basically drunk from drinking it. But that was in my practice, that is them accepting it, which leads into the next segment of this. Also, what do I do with my offerings? It depends on your feeling. If it's food, you can take it outside and bury it. You could, if you really wanted to, you could set the bitch on fire and burn it to ash, and then use that ash in your practice. Typically, I will either A, bury it, or if it is safe for the environment and or the animals around my specific location, I will just leave it out there for them. And some people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh my God, that's so disrespectful. And I'm like, what are you talking about, boo? Like, Sally, what are you talking about? True enough, we're going to have different views on this, but what are deities and what do deities and spirits do? A lot of the times they interfere with animals or can affect animals to get a message across to us. Now, I also, in my head, I also do picture, like, if I lay out a cigarette, because I've got a place where I put cigarettes, cigars, blunts. I am a smoker. Okay, I live in Florida, so it's legal here to a degree. But if I'm smoking a joint or a blunt, and I don't feel like I'll get a random feeling where it's like, smoke whatever you feel like, stop when you want to, but give it to the ancestors. And I do. I'll either set that bitch on fire, and I've got an old school candle holder that's got like this metal spike in it, so I can pop it on there, and the airflow goes through, and it'll burn out. There's been some times where I've collected cigarettes over like a course of a year. It filled up an entire pack and a half. And then when we grilled, after we grilled our food and everything, I set the bitch on fire. You can let me know your opinion on that, but at the end of the day, I mean, I love to hear other people's opinions, but if it's negative, I really don't care. It's my practice. You're gonna get that point too, okay? Nobody can come in and tell you what your ancestors like and what they don't like, because they're your fucking ancestors, all right? Now, I have to be careful with saying this. Most of the time, your ancestors will not directly go to somebody else unless it's already set up. What do I mean by that? So if you randomly have a person online randomly hit you up and say, hey, your ancestors don't like this, or you've been cursed, or some bullshit like this, take it with a grain of salt, okay? In my experience, yes, I have had ancestors show up like 2 to 3 days to a week before that person even thought about coming to me for a reading. So it is possible, but no. If it looks like a scam, it feels like a scam, it's probably a fucking scam, all right? And they're getting really good at that. But in general, your ancestors and deities are not going to send a message that in some way, shape, or form you're not going to be able to figure it out, all right? We're not in fucking National Treasure, all right? They're not leaving just these cryptid codes all over the place. They can be tricky, all right? I'm not going to lie, but at the end of the day, in some way, shape, or form, they're going to get their point across. When it comes to working with land spirits, what offering should you give, or can I give? And I actually think I talked about the video that is currently uploading right now. All right, working with the spirits on the outside, the land spirits. Sorry, I got a new pin. So, what offerings do I give land spirits? That's going to be up to you. You can go on regional place, as normally and typically when it comes to land spirits, they will, and this is also why one of the reasons I think some people are working with land spirits, but they also think it's the fae, which also, depending on where you're at in the world, it actually is both, and or it's a mixture. They may like honey, they may like milk. Chocolate's a 50-50, but I've talked about this in my lives before, my live witches chats. I also think that because most animals can't handle chocolate, specifically their like organs and digestive system can't actually process it. So that's a negative. Even in the fae, you never offer chocolate. With the fae, you never offer chocolate, and you never actually thank them, because from my understanding, sorry if that was loud, I'm getting used to this. This right here, the microphone that I'm using, for some reason doesn't work on my new phone, but it works on my old phone. I figured out the reason that is. It's just annoying. Anyways, I'm getting used to it. But yeah, don't say thank you to them because they find like it is a huge dishonor to them. And yes, if you want me to, I can make a video on my experiences with working with the Fae. I'm not an expert, but you can work with them and they're not going to fuck your life up, okay? You can piss them off or disrespect them, um, but you can work with them, okay? Anyways, um, tobacco, wine, coffee. Specifically, I try to do things that if I do feel that call to give an offering to the land, or to the spirits of the land, and I do believe there's a difference. When I say land spirit, I think of like almost an elemental, but of that specific area. And then spirits of the land are they're either nature spirits or they are something that possibly used to be alive and no longer is, and so many other variants between that. All right, I'm still myself when it comes to the spiritual side. I'm still trying to figure it out, what I believe, what resonates with me and what doesn't. And guess what, that is part of this journey. That is one of the coolest, funnest parts of this journey. Okay, anyways, where do I give their offerings at? What do I do with it? You can bury it if you want. If it is something like bird feed, if you go out and get bird feed, try to find native bird feed. What the fuck does that mean, Lotus? So a lot of the especially spring's coming around, so we're about to start seeing the wildflowers and the bird feed and stuff like that. Just know that if you were to go out and get a bird feeder, and I've seen it time and time again as somebody who's worked as a landscaper in my past, a lot of that stuff that the birds don't fully eat, if it hits that ground and it's that right thing, it will grow. So in other words, you're going to try not to introduce invasive species to your area, because obviously that's not going to help the land spirits, right? But basically also giving back to the land, whether that is doing a garden, say if you live in an area to where you can just let your land go wild, like we do to a degree. You've seen it online where you have the dandelions and the things that we as society has labeled as weeds, but are actually herbs and are native, and it actually helps the environment in ways that we never could. Those things, okay? Which is another reason some people are going to know what I'm saying. It is very important and very cool, and it takes your practice to a whole nother level if you incorporate what? Bioregalism. I hope I said that right. Because that is not just the study and the observance of the animals. It's also getting to know, also introducing wildcrafting. If you don't know what that is, please fall down that rabbit hole. I've made videos before of a few book reviews on a great way to start with wildcrafting. If you're a folk practitioner, that's going to be great. If you're like me and we use what we have, that's going to be really great. For an example, if you live here in Florida, thanks to UF, the University of Florida, they have one hell of an online website. You can look up every single native species that grows around you. You can look up edible species and all different types of shapes and sorts, and it's completely all 100% free. So please, if you live in Florida, check that shit out, and I will try my best if I forget. So if you see this video and it is not in the description of this video, please comment saying, hey, can you post the Florida herbal link? And I'll understand what you're saying. But yeah, incorporating that. So like, say you did find some bird seed that it's not too invasive. So in other words, what I mean by the invasive thing is don't plant something that's going to completely take over the entire environment. Sunflower seeds, things like that, that's different. But yeah, that's what I mean. And a lot of people, when they're like, oh, I want to give an offering to the land, due to how we talk about offerings, it's always about food and drinks, but it's anything that can help that land, okay? Whether that is walking around on a weekend, whether you're doing this by yourself, if you do, please carry protection of some sort. And please let multiple people in all different areas of your life know what you're doing and where you're at. We live in a very scary world, but going out and cleaning the road that you live on, literally going and picking the trash up, things like that, that's literally giving back to the environment, cleaning riverways, things like that. So even if you do have a community and you have the resources to be able to join these groups and programs around your local area to give back to the environment, That is a number one way of being able to respect the land. I mean, think about it. Yeah, you can go out, you can garden and things like that, but if you're purposely going around cleaning up the property, that's going to help the land, thus helping the land spirits. Not to mention, that's also footwork. So yeah, but when it comes to the food, if you live in an area where you have a lot of wildlife and that specific food or certain types of food can attract that wildlife, like bears and cougars and things like that, be safe with it, all right? In other words, try to find alternatives that you will safely be able to lay out that will help the land and animals around you, but it's not going to draw things that you don't necessarily want. Another thing, watch out using salt. I know, oh my God, Lotus, salt circle, it's so protective. There are hundreds of other different things that you can use that are extremely protective, but also help the land. Too much salt in one area, it's called razzing it, and it basically destroys the soil to where it can't actually, I think it throws off the pH, but most importantly, it makes it to where the soil and the plants around it can't actually sustain liquid. So it basically destroys that shit. So yeah, be careful with your salt out there, all right? There's so many alternatives: brick dust, corn flour, eggshells, ground up sticks. You can get really creative with that, all right? But yeah, I want to make this short and quick. 26 minutes later. Um, as always, I hope you like this video. I hope you've learned something. Teach me something. What is something that you do to help connect you with these spirits, and what are things that you do on your deities? Also, when it comes to the altars, um, periodically I would clear it. What I mean by clearing it is like, kind of rearranging it, completely redoing it, scraping it down to its bare bones, washing all of that and redoing it. Um, Typically, I would say do it with the seasons, but that doesn't work for me. I'll do it when I get called to do it. Um, Also, another thing that I do and I see online, and it's just a pet peeve to me, I don't understand it, is when you like put something on your altar. You've already cleansed it once, you put it on your altar to kind of charge, and then you cleanse it again. I don't understand that. Your altar is your sacred space. On top of that, think of your altar as this invisible box around it. So all the magic and shit you're doing, after you send the initial workings out, it's still holding that psychokinetic energy into it, and over time it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. So if you use loose herbs, if you burn incense and dust and dirt and stuff like that, when you're going to clean your altar, don't just like scoop it in a trash can and throw it away. Find some type of container. I use an old school coffee or a recycled coffee can, and I collect that because it's gunpowder. Now I will go through a step to where I'll actually clean it and kind of separate the big pieces versus the small pieces. But that's, I know a chaos witch who calls it magic gunpowder, and I absolutely love it because it is. It's something that has your psychokinetic energy and all different types of other energies built into it. So use that because it could go very far in your practice. Anyways, if you made it to this part of the video, what's your favorite picture on this tapestry that you can see? Here, I'll move. There we go. And for anybody ask, I got it on Amazon. I'm obsessed with it. I just wish it was slightly bigger. I've actually got to get a new tapestry to fully take up the screen. Anyways, thank you so much. Again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell icon so you get all the notifications of when I go live and or post. And again, let me know in the comments, what do you like on this? And what is something you do to work with your land spirits? You do not have to feel pressured to like say anything in the comments. If you want to be a silent watcher, you totally can be. Anyways, as always, I hope you're having a great night.